Torah portion of Toldot. In this week's Torah portion it says, when Yitzchak was old and his eyes were too dim to see. In other words, Yitzchak had become blind. Rashi gives three explanations for the dimming of his eyes. Three explanations are as follows. Number one, because of the smoke from the sacrifices that Esav's wives offered to their idols, as a result of this he became blind. Number two, when Yitzchak was almost offered as a sacrifice, the heavens opened up and the angel's tears fell in his eyes, and this blinded him. Explanation number three is that Yitzchak became blind in order that Yaakov should be able to receive the blessings from his father. We can ask a number of questions on Rashi's commentary. Why does Rashi need any reason whatsoever for Yitzchak's difficulty seeing? The verse itself gives the reason. When Yitzchak was old and his eyes were too dim to see. Everyone knows that in one's old age it is difficult to see. Number two, whenever Rashi brings two or more explanations, it's because each explanation has a problem which the other one does not have. What are the questions that we could ask on each explanation? Another question, when Rashi brings three explanations of something, there's a problem with each of the three commentaries. This is why he finds it necessary to quote the third. We must understand the difficulty in each of the two explanations in the Rashi before us and how the third solves this difficulty. Rashi had a very good reason for not explaining Yitzchak's vision on old age. In last week's Torah portion it said, and Hashem blessed Yitzchak. Rashi explains there that Avraham said that the one who possesses the blessings, in other words Hashem, God, he should bless Yitzchak. Now, if God himself blessed Yitzchak, how was it possible for him to lose his vision? Loss of vision causes terrible anguish. The rabbis even compare a blind person to one who is dead. Especially true because Yitzchak was relatively not at all that old. He was 123 years old. We don't find anyone who preceded him, even those who were much older, losing their vision as a result of old age. The reason that Rashi needs to find other reasons for Yitzchak's blindness. If not for the other reasons, his sight would have been fine. His old age would not have been a reason for him to lose his sight. There must have been other reasons that prevented him from seeing. Because Yitzchak was blind despite God's blessing, presents an immediate question. It's a question that we have to answer right away. The answer is likely to be found in a nearby verse. In other words, since the question is immediate, the answer should be immediate as well. Since immediately prior to this, the Torah says that Esav's wives were a vexation of spirit to Yitzchak and Rivka because of their idolatry, it's likely that this is the reason. However, this explanation provides us with two additional questions. Number one, Esav's wives had their own homes. They didn't come to Yitzchak's house to worship idols. Why should it have affected him? Number two, why did it affect Yitzchak and not Rivka? Just as Yitzchak was a tzaddik, so was Rivka. Rivka was a tzaddik. There's a different difficulty in each of Rashi's other two explanations. Both the explanation that angels' tears fell on his eyes and the other explanation that he lost his eyesight in order for Yaakov to receive the blessings have a common difficulty, and the difficulty is that neither is hinted at in the Torah. Each explanation has its own additional difficulty. Saying that angels' tears fell on his eyes is very far from the simple explanation, and we know that Rashi always gives the simplest possible explanation. Number two, why would God make someone blind for so many years in order to give a different person a blessing? And this is especially true in light of the fact that God has many different ways to do this, to accomplish this. There were many ways that God could have seen to it that Yaakov would receive the blessing instead of Esav. This is actually a far greater difference. As we said before, each of these explanations has an advantage over the other two. In other words, any of the two explanations have a similar difficulty which is explained by the other. Rashi's first explanation has a very clear advantage. It's the only explanation that is hinted at in the Torah itself. The Torah tells us clearly that the idolatry of Yitzchak's wives provided them with a vexation of spirit. They were upset. Rashi's second explanation has a different advantage. All three explanations tell why Yitzchak gave the blessings to Yaakov, but the first and third explanations are both negative things which led to a blessing. Only the second explanation is something positive. The advantage of the third explanation is that only the third explanation has Yitzchak becoming blind just prior to giving the blessings. That is the reason the verse says first Yitzchak was old, and then it says that his eyes became dim. The lesson we must learn from this Rashi is as follows. We must be extremely careful not to slander someone. Now, God could have very easily just told Yitzchak that, hey, Esav is evil, don't give him the blessings. God did not wish to do that. Instead, Yitzchak needed to sit in his house as a blind man just in order that God would not slander him. How much more so is this true of us, that we must be careful not to slander anyone?